You're now watching the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Mike Missanelli podcast. Oh, it is a Monday, December 11th, and we are feeling low. Christmas time is just around the corner, and Eagle fans are feeling really down and out, and that's because of what happened yesterday and what happened the week before. The Dallas Cowboys whack the Philadelphia Eagles 33-13. You can go down a list of things that were bad. So I'm going to make a general statement here, and I don't know if you agree with it or not. Yesterday was another window into their soul. They aren't as good as the 49ers and Cowboys. I think the last 2 weeks have proven they just aren't at that level. The Cowboys are better, and the 49ers are better. And they would only have a slim shot of getting to the Super Bowl this year only if a miracle happens and they happen to play the NFC title game at home. The odds for that are extremely slim, and we'll go over them a little by little. But the Eagles right now, and I think you can all agree, are looking like a team that's just limping to the finish. And the only reason they're going to survive is because their final 4 games are against weaker opponents, and they should be able to win. Now, that doesn't guarantee a win next week in Seattle, but that might not make a difference. And we'll sort all of that out in just a little bit. Why are the Eagles now finding themselves in this kind of a position? Well, let's go down and tick off some things. First of all, their defense right now looks as shabby as it's ever been. They are gassed. They appear to not have any energy or fight or verve. They are just a jumbled mess right now. And here's the thing. They're using aftermarket parts to fuel what they thought was a big, hardy engine. And by aftermarket parts, I think that we've been in denial about this. Because they've tacked on this guy here. They've tacked this guy here. They have shown desperation by throwing a guy who probably isn't deserving of playing right now in his career in there. And by that, I mean, here we go. The following acquisitions that were supposed to plug holes. Byard, Roby, Leonard, who played about 15 seconds against the Cowboys yesterday, with Cunningham and Morrow as their linebackers, who don't distinguish themselves anyway. In addition to that, they threw in Sidney Brown yesterday. All right, he made a nice hit. He also made some mistakes. Eli Ricks, they're trying to squeeze some juice out of. That hasn't happened. They even played Keely Ringo yesterday, who managed to distinguish himself with 2 penalties on the same play. A pass interference wrapped around a face mask. Now, the conclusion that the Eagles, that we were all in denial about this, because what's true about the Eagles, if they're not getting to the quarterback with their front 4, their back 7 isn't good enough. And I think playing those 2 teams over the last couple of weeks, who are supposed elite teams, have exposed them. Now, let's look at the offense. The offense isn't capable of outscoring a good team. On a day like yesterday, when you knew Cowboys going to go 30+, you have to be able to score with them if your defense isn't going to shut them down. And the Eagles' defense right now is a leaky faucet. They're an engine with aftermarket parts sputtering and trying to get around the block. So it's imperative that your offense fortifies and stays in games to pick up your defense. So what happened yesterday? The Eagles fumbled the ball 3 times in Dallas territory by their 3 best offensive players. A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith. Hurts doesn't have the same swag as he had. He just does not. I don't know why. I think a lot of it is because of their bad scheme. But if you notice, their offensive scheme is not helping him along. He needs to get the ball out of his hands quickly. He is not doing that. He is holding on to the ball because he's confused. And the reason why he's confused, the Eagles have taken away the RPO component of their offense. Why have they done that? Well, I think it's because they got scared about him getting banged up on the knee several games ago. So they're trying to go overboard to protect him. Although they do, for some reason that is unclear to me, run quarterback keepers. They don't run the RPO, but they'll run a couple quarterback keepers. So one goes in the face of the other. Either you want to protect the guy or you don't want to protect the guy. If you don't want to protect the guy because you made a $300 million investment in him, or you want to protect him because of that, well, then go back to the RPO and say, that's an essential part of our offense. We have to take the risk that maybe he's going to get hit and get hurt because he's getting hit anyway. All right. He is giving the ball away at an alarming rate. Now, several games ago, he was in the running for the MVP of this league. Since then, he has fallen off the cliff. He has 10 interceptions, and he has lost 5 fumbles this year. That's not acceptable. And you're not going to win, and you're not going to score points when you have to score points to make up for your defense, which is not stable right now. So let's get to the crux of what this all means. And then we're going to go work back, and we're going to dissect and do surgery on the actual game. The playoff situation is all that counts. I'm one of these guys that looks ahead and says, all right, what's the resolution here? What could possibly happen? And so the bottom line is that the Eagles still could end up with the number 1 seed, although that's highly unlikely because they've now put themselves in a position where if the 49ers win out, the 49ers get the number 1 seed, and the Eagles would get the number 2 seed. So here's the way I look at it. And I'm just projecting here. 49ers have one tough game left. It's against the Ravens. That game is in San Francisco. I don't think they're going to lose that game. So I think the 49ers win out, get the number 1 seed. We can forget about it. And then we project the playoffs from that point on. Dallas Cowboys have a tough schedule. The Eagles have the tiebreak over the Dallas Cowboys. If the Eagles lose to Seattle next week, I still think it's possible that Dallas will lose one of their remaining games because they have to go at the Bills, at the Dolphins, and play the Lions before they get to the Commanders. They had 3 tough games before they get to the BOP, which means they could probably lose 1 game. So even if the Eagles lose next week, count on Dallas losing 1 more game. That takes Dallas out of the picture. That makes the Eagles the number 2 seed. With the number 2 seed right now, as it stands, the Eagles would play a first-round game against the Green Bay Packers, who have the 7 seed. Now, that could change. That's a fluky division. You never know what's going to happen there. But the Eagles would play the Packers. The Lions would be the 3rd seed. They would play the Vikings. And the Buccaneers, this happens every year with that crap division, they would win the division and host the game against the Cowboys. And so what happens from that point on is the second round, because you're thinking the Eagles would win at home against the Packers, although nothing is a guarantee anymore. And if they lose that first round game, it would be one of the ultimate disappointments in Philadelphia sports history. But let's just project and say they could beat the Packers in game 1. They then play the Lions. The 49ers would play the Cowboys in San Francisco. I guess the Cowboys can beat them there. I wouldn't count on it. And so what we come down to as we project logically, can the Eagles beat the Lions at Lincoln Financial Field? With this team, the way they are, can they beat the Lions? And even if they beat the Lions, the prize is you would then have to win an NFC title game in San Francisco. I don't think their Super Bowl chances are very good. In fact, what I saw yesterday canceled out any Super Bowl hopes I have. There is no way that you can convince me that this team would go to San Francisco and win an NFC title game there. And now you can't even convince me that they could beat the Lions at home, even though I think the Lions are frauds. That's how monumental that game was yesterday when you looked at the Eagles and the Cowboys and the vast disparity between the way those two teams are playing now. If you watched that game, you looked at your team, the Eagles, and you said, they don't seem to be into it. Their body language is not very good. They're not playing as aggressive as the Cowboys, who were trying to take your head off in that game yesterday. The Cowboys were ready for that challenge. The Eagles were not. So if you're looking for a window in somebody's soul, that's what the Eagles are right now. So let's get into the game itself. We already know what the stakes are right now. Let's look at the game. The Eagles love to defer. I guess most teams do. The Eagles, more than most teams, love to defer. So they kick the ball off. The Cowboys get the kickoff. They march right down the field with an opening drive touchdown, running the ball right down their throats. They run 10 plays on the Eagles. They were 3 for 3 on third downs. One of those conversions was a third down in the red zone. And then they get a TD on a 3rd and 2 at the 13 on a pass to CeeDee Lamb. The Eagles come back at them. They look like they're driving, and they actually ran the ball. The first couple plays were running plays, and I'm going, oh, man, look at this. They have committed to a different part of their offense. 30-yard pass to Devontae Smith with Hurst on the move, which is when he makes that play, when he's on the move, and he delivers it with confidence, you know it's going to be a completion. That was a completion. However, A.J. Brown gets a penalty that backs it up 10. And then Jalen Hurts on a design run fumbles it away. The Cowboys come back down, and this was the only time really that the Eagles defense showed any gumption all day. They held on a drive that looked like Dallas was going to score another touchdown. And they had to settle for a 60-yard field goal attempt by Brandon Aubrey, this young maniac who came from the USFL, played soccer. He drilled one that went halfway to Arlington. And it's 10-0 to Cowboys. So that's okay. 10-0 is not a great deficit. The Eagles get a field goal in their next drive. Why? Wasn't their offense that did it. It was a fake punt with Brandon Mann throwing it to Zacchaeus. That's the biggest play. And that's how they get a field goal on that play. And then the Cowboys go bang, bang, 2 straight touchdowns sandwiched around another field goal by Elliott. And they take a 24-6 lead in the halftime. The biggest game of the Eagles season finds themselves down 24-6 on that halftime. Now, on that last TD drive, just before the half, it was a 1-yard pass to Michael Gallup after Cooks beat James Bradbury on a skinny post route. Now, this is what I'm talking about with their back seven. You used to be able to rely on their cornerbacks. Bradbury's running on the outside flank of that play. He opens the gate for the guy to just turn in and catch the ball. And that's the play at the drive where Keely Ringo manages to get the pass interference and a face mask. And at that point, this is hard for me to believe. At that point, the Eagles had given up 9 touchdowns on their opponent's last 10 drives, counting the San Francisco game the week before. That is unbelievable to me. This was a team we go, boy, look at this. Their defense is good. Their offensive is good. And look where they are right now. And so you look at the big tease in the third quarter. And the big tease is Dallas gets a little funky. They get out of the rhythm a little bit. They start fooling around a little bit. It results in a strip sack of Prescott by Fletcher Cox and the TD return on the fumble by Jalen Carter, who toasted in the end zone. And you go, okay, they're back in the game here. It's 24-13. Just as an aside at 24-13, I want to ask you this question because I don't know if you thought about the same thing that I thought of. At 24-12, which is what it was after the touchdown, why would you kick a PAT there? I mean, maybe I don't have the analytics down, but if you go for 2 and get it, it's 24-14. It makes it a 10-point game. You kick the PAT, all right. You could still. It's an 8-point. It's not the same. It's 11, and it's the 2 possessions. So I don't understand why they did that, but that's beside the point. Did that play give him life? Did that touchdown give him life? Nah. Cowboys get a big 32-yard completion from Dak to Jake Ferguson, who just pummels and beats people to get that gain. And then they get a 59-yard field goal by Kicky Boy, the strong Kicky Boy. And that quickly became 30-13, and the game is over. Now, there's also a point of the second half that I scratch my head again. And again, maybe I'm just not plugged in analytically. The Eagles go for it on a 4th and 9 at the Dallas 30. A field goal at that point would make it 27-16, and you're a field goal and an 8-point touchdown away from tying it. But what do I know? I'm just a schmo. They got all their analytic geniuses up in the box, and I'm going, why would they go for it on 4th and 9 instead of taking an easy field goal to at least get points on the board to put you within 2 scores? I don't get it. So anyway, the postscript to this horror show, before I bring in producer Darren, is that the Eagles against the 2 other elite teams, I don't know if I can call the Eagles now one of the 3, because I always thought there were only 3 elite teams in the NFC. Against the 2 elite teams, the 49ers and Cowboys, in consecutive weeks, they have been outscored 75-32. Now, if you think there's a regeneration from this, God bless you. The only regeneration I can see is that they're going to limp into the playoffs and get a fairly decent seed, but they're in danger of actually losing a preliminary game before they get to an NFC title game. That's the way I see it right now. Let's bring in producer Darren. Darren, your thoughts.
A few weeks now, we're here talking about the offensive coordinator not being able to get this team into a rhythm. They came out and ran the ball twice for 11 yards and then forgot about it for 3 drives. I don't understand. There's no way you can make me understand that. This team's problems, particularly over the last couple weeks, are at the coaching level. They haven't scored more than 7 points in the first half since November 5th. I mean, they're not ready. They don't come out ready to play. And I commend them on their halftime adjustments that they made in some games this year, particularly against Kansas City, against Buffalo, against Miami. But this team, for the most part this season, just does not come out ready to play. And that's a coaching thing. Defensively, maybe I was seeing it and I was telling myself I wasn't seeing it. But the cornerbacks on this team, they've not lost a step. They've lost a few gallops. Like, they really can't keep up with anyone. And Desai has them so soft on almost every play. And now I know why. Like, he can't even think about using these guys in press. You can't even consider that right now. And Eli Ricks is on the field way too much. He's not ready to play at this level. You can clearly see that. Keely Ringo probably isn't either. And there's a number of guys on this team that aren't ready to play at the pro level. Morrow was a fill-in guy. He was a free agent signing. But the systemic failure of this organization to, year after year, ignore a complete level of the defense is astonishing to me. Like, it's getting worse and worse when we look at the linebackers here. I thought Zach Cunningham back would be a help. I guess he was. But the problems with this team are at the coaching level and the general manager continuing to ignore the linebacker position. And he hit on all these fill-in guys last year. Every one of them was a home run. He's whiffed on all these guys. Byard just looks old. He just looks done. Yes, I know he's a 3-time All-Pro and 5-time Pro Bowler. Yeah, I get it. They gave him away for a box of nickels. He's old. He can't run. Bradley Roby, he showed some signs in that Rams game. Hey, maybe he can, that veteran leadership, that veteran knowledge. The fill-in guys aren't getting it done. The linebackers aren't getting it done. That's both on the general manager. This team doesn't come out ready to play. That's on the head coach. This team never gets into an offensive rhythm. That's the offensive coordinator. You can't continue to keep throwing that against the wall and hope it sticks. All right.
So you're right about everything you just said. There is definitely a coaching problem here. The offense is a Nick Sirianni production, and we've heard more evidence of that over the last couple of weeks. All right, Brian Johnson calls the plays. This is Nick Sirianni's game plan. This is what he wants to do. Brian Johnson does what Nick Sirianni wants to do. But let's look at the defense, because this is where I want to focus on. For the Eagles to think that they could just have a mishmash of desperate players to throw in there and have some kind of cohesive defensive unit is nearly malpractice. Now, I'm going to say that we were suckers. We bought into all this. Well, this is a team that can't lose. They have this resiliency about them where they just refuse to lose. That shows heart. That shows this. That shows that. And we got carried away with that because we didn't evaluate them against the premier talent. And here come the 49ers and here come the Dallas Cowboys, and they have exposed what the Eagles aren't on defense. You can't take guys that were not even on your roster, not good enough to be on your roster, and throw them into a starting role and think at linebacker you're going to be okay. You can't take a guy like Byard and Roby, who have been thrown away by their old teams, and throw them in there and think you're going to get some kind of a miracle job out of them. And then if you don't develop your young guys because they haven't developed Ricks, they haven't developed Sidney Brown. Listen, he's crazy, man. I get it. He's not developed as an NFL player. And so you're throwing all these guys in there and you're expecting to have a cohesive unit, and they have been exposed by good teams. Now, there was a time that I didn't think they could lose to the Detroit Lions. And maybe we're blowing a horn here out of desperation and panic. And I'll allow for that. But the way they're playing now, I can't be comfortable with them even hosting a game against the Lions. And I never thought I would think that. What I know is they can't possibly with this team because they can't score enough to overcome their defensive weaknesses. They can't possibly go to San Francisco and win a game to get to the Super Bowl. And that's disappointing because this whole thing is measured by getting to the next step. They got to the Super Bowl last year, and we thought with tweaks here, tweaks there, they could get to the Super Bowl again. But what we didn't realize, those guys they let go because they wanted to save a couple pennies. Guys like T.J. Edwards, who we thought, that wasn't a big loss. Turned out it was, because that was one guy they did develop. Epps is another guy. That was another guy who helped out last year. And they just kind of discard these guys thinking that anybody walking down the street, when they throw them in there, is going to make up a fortified defense. And that's terrible management. So that's where we are now. And I just want to go over this playoff situation with you because I laid it out the way I think it's going to come out. Now, listen, it is possible that the Dallas Cowboys could sweep the rest of their game. I don't think that'll happen. But the way they're playing now, the thing is they have to go on the road and play a couple tough games. They have to go into Buffalo and win a game. They have to go into Miami and win that game. But they're playing well enough to be able to say, it would shock me if they did. So if they do, and the Eagles lose to Seattle, which is very, very possible, you're talking about the Cowboys now winning that division, getting the 2 seed, which would drop the Eagles into the 5th seed. Because of the way the configurations go with the division winners. And then they would have to climb up from that point, and as the 5th seed, they wouldn't even get the home game. How you feel about that?
I still don't really worry about just about any team at the link. San Francisco, I'd be stupid not to worry about them at the link. And Dallas is a formidable opponent. They are playing better than they played all season. That's for sure. But other than those two teams, I still think, I still think the quarterback beats them alone, right? My God. And he has looked terrible. I mean, he looked terrible on Sunday, man. He's holding the ball to him.
The quarterback beats who?
Anybody but Dallas and San Francisco.
Who are we talking about? Which team?
Yes. The Lions,
the Lions.
Packers, and Bears, oh my.
Okay. Suppose they get the 5th seed.
Wait, say that again? Okay, and
suppose they get the 5th seed.
They could beat Detroit in Detroit.
If they win, if they win that game, guess who they play in the second round?
Yeah, that's the end of the road.
They play the 49ers in the second round.
That's the end of the road.
Okay, so that's the end of the season in the second game of the playoffs. The way I've laid it out is the best case scenario where they get the 2 seed and they would have to play the Packers, and in their next game they would play the Lions, who would beat the Vikings.
Most likely.
So that Lions game, you don't think that they have a problem beating the Lions at Lincoln Financial Field? That's what you're telling me. Okay,
and I still think what you laid out there is the most
think
reasonable scenario to happen. They get the 2 seed.
Okay. But if they get the 5 seed,
and they got to go to Detroit or go to Dallas. No, they go to Dallas. What is it?
no.
Oh no,
They
they
will
lose
have to go to San
I said that already.
Francisco. The first game
they
would be
win that
against the
game, and they go to San
Buccaneers
Francisco and
in
lose
Tampa.
again.
Okay, and then they
go
would
to San
play the
Francisco and lose,
49ers.
yes.
All right. So it's either they're out in the second round or they're out in the NFC title game, which means Super Bowl
so you have no faith that Dallas goes into San Francisco and wins? Well, that's the only. I mean, if that happens, then the
Dallas
NFC
could win that
Championship game is
game.
in Philly against the Cowboys, which is a game I think the Eagles could win. I don't think they can win against the Niners in San Francisco.
Unless the Cowboys win out the rest of this year. See, all these moving parts now, the Eagles have put themselves in play because at one point they had control. Now they don't. And now there are people saying they could lose in Seattle. And after what I just saw, I never thought I would say that. They could lose in Seattle. Now, the line started out, Seattle was +2. That's how the line started. I think it may have gone up to 4. I don't know. It's going up to 4. I don't think the Eagles will lose 3 straight, okay? So what I believe will happen is that I think that they'll win in Seattle and they won't lose any game, the remaining game, because it's 2 against the Giants and 1 against the Cardinals. They're not going to lose any of those games. So that would give them the 2 seed.
Eagles are
and
3.5.
Plan ahead from there. 3.5. Okay. Well, that's healthy enough for me to go. They won't lose 3 in a row. They'll win that game in Seattle, and everybody will feel a little better about themselves. But like I warned last week, when people weren't really thinking, I always go big picture. I play it out to the end of the road. And my end of the road said, if they lose that game against the 49ers, they're done for the number 1 seed and hosting, having home field advantage the whole thing. And they would have to then beat San Francisco there. That's what I was worried about. My worst fears came through. The sum of all fears was that they lost to San Francisco, and here they come. Losing to Dallas is one thing. Getting exposed like they did 2 straight weeks by the 2 better teams in the conference is really a window into their soul.
Let me ask you this. Let's say the Ravens go into San Francisco, somehow win on Sunday. Eagles win in Seattle on Monday night. How you feeling?
I'm sorry. Repeat that
is
one
the Ravens
again?
game against the Niners this week? When do they play the Ravens?
No.
2 weeks. So say Seattle,
the
Eagles beat Seattle on Monday, and then the following week, Baltimore beats San Francisco, and the Eagles are back in the driver's seat. Yeah.
And the Eagles win out?
Yeah.
And they get the number 1
seed? I
seed?
will tell you is more reasonable to me than them getting than the Eagles getting the 5th seed.
Okay. And listen, it's possible. I don't think the Ravens beat the 49ers there. If it was here in Baltimore, maybe. All right. So that wraps up our Eagles-Cowboys perspective for this podcast. Of course, the Mike Missanelli podcast is brought to you by BetRivers, where I had a stinging winner with my BetRivers app this week, where I took the Chicago Bears, getting a few points, and they wound up winning the game outright. BetRivers app is fantastic. You can make your bets on the fly on any sport, and you get your NFL plays in, and then you get the college football bowl season coming up pretty soon. All righty, it is time for Around the NFL, my 5 thoughts of the weekend of football. And let's start with Audubon, New Jersey's own Jersey Joe Flacco. Now, this is a story that I can hardly believe. First of all, he's 38 going on 39. And he has come off the street to be a starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, who yesterday won behind Flacco for the 4th time with 4 different quarterbacks this year. All right, so that's pretty monumental with that offensive coordinator being able to do that. And it's not as monumental because Flacco's been around the block, and he pretty much knows everything he needs to know about how to win a football game. But here's my question about Joe. why does he still want to play football? I'm thinking like the dude's had a long career. He's a wealthy man. He's got golf course interest all over the place. Why would he want to subject himself back to the NFL where he can get his brains beat in? I don't understand it, but he does, and he comes back and he doesn't miss a beat. And yesterday he throws for 307 yards. He took one sack with 3 touchdowns and 1 interception, and he leads the Cleveland Browns over the Jacksonville Jaguars 31-27. Listen, I guys don't want to give it up, I guess. I do not understand. A quarterback, the most perilous position in sports, first of all, where the heat is really on you, where guys trying to take your head off. And I'm 38 and I've played that many years. I go, how do you have the energy and the will to want to come back as a starting quarterback when you haven't played? Like, what does he do? Does he stay in shape every day like he's with an NFL team? And if he's not in perfect shape, how is he able to play at that level? Darren, your thoughts on Jersey Joe?
I mean, some guys just still have a little bit left in the tank, or a little bit will in the tank. Every player, I've interviewed a lot of retired NFL ball players, and not just football, but every sport. When you ask them the number one thing they miss, it's the locker room. It's the guys. It's the riding, getting with the team, taking the plane over, taking the bus, whatever it may be. Maybe he just missed that. I mean,
all right, listen, man. I
don't know. He's obviously got the ability to still throw the ball.
I'm not him. I just don't understand, once you've been out of the game, why you would have the desire to go through all that again. But he does, and he's now playing. Want to keep playing in the league? Like, he's over 40. Like, I don't know. A lot of it is like, I don't have anything else to do, so I'll go back and play NFL quarterback. In a way, I don't know. It's admirable, and yet it's kind of sad. I just don't understand it. But anyway, good luck to Joe with his ventures, and maybe he'll play another year for some other team, or maybe he'll carry a clipboard for a couple more years to get his salary. But it's pretty amazing that Flacco beats the Jacksonville Jaguars. Another game that I had.
The league minimum ain't too bad,
What's that?
The league minimum isn't too bad. If he ends up getting a clipboard job out of it.
How much money has the guy made in his life?
There's a guy who just signed a contract in Major League Sports for $700
I'm glad you asked that, because I want to check that right now. I will check that as we speak.
Okay.
Because here we go. All right, let's get the not Wikipedia.
The wisest money he spent was basically being my neighbor down the street in Sea Isle.
Pro Football Reference will have this. They say have it at the end on how much money a guy has made in his career. So let's see what we got here with Joseph Vincent Flacco. Okay, let's go all the way down where the salaries are. And let's see. And they don't have the salaries. They have baseball players' salaries. They don't have his salaries. How much he's made.
According to Sport Track, Mike, the 38-year-old quarterback has surpassed. You ready for this?
Go ahead.
$174.3 million during his 15-year season career.
Like $173 million. He just doesn't have anything else to do. That's the point. He doesn't have.
Of course, they're expensive, man.
Come on,
What's
man.
the line in Ocean's 11?
$73 million in my lifetime. I'm going to go back and play quarterback and put up with that practice routine and the weightlifting routine and the getting smashed on Sunday.
I think it's Ocean's 12.
I don't get it. But,
I think it's Ocean's 12 when Danny Ocean says to Rusty, Brad Pitt's character, he goes, where'd all your money go? And he just looks at him and goes, hotels, man.
Yeah.
Maybe
well,
golf courses, man.
I'm sure Flacco has been smart enough to save his money, $173 million. All right, so congratulations to Joe. Let's go to another quarterback now. I think people are a little bit overreacting to it, but he won yesterday, so it's a good story. Jake Browning is now the darling of Cincinnati. And he's cheating on your boy, man. He's cheating on Man Crush, because now the town is in love with Jake Browning, the Cinderella boy from the University of Washington. He's been kicked around the league. 27 years old he is. He was undrafted after having a great career at Washington. He was also like this high school superstar who set California passing records. Undrafted, then waived by the Vikings who had signed him, and then waived by the Bengals, and then he resigned to the practice squad. Then he became active when they had that quarterback situation that was there, and all of a sudden he's winning games, and people in Cincinnati go, boy, they really found something in Jake Browning. Relax, it's been 2 games. But what do you think of your boy cheating on your man crush, Joe Burrow?
I think it's something I've been saying for weeks, months. The league is terrible. There's a lot of bad defenses out there. It makes a lot of these quarterbacks look a lot better than they are. There's a lot of bad teams, dude. A lot.
I love the way people overreact, though. I really do.
Yeah.
Every quarterback has a splash. There's always a quarterback who come in and have a splash. Like earlier this year, it was Josh Dobbs. Now he stinks. He's like regressed to being back to the Josh Dobbs world. So I would tell the people in Cincinnati to just chill out with the Jake Browning thing. All right, next thing. A 3-0 game in the NFL is absolutely embarrassing and pathetic. And both of those offensive coordinators, the fact that the Vikings win the game 3-0 by scoring on a field goal late in the game and can't score against the Raiders is one of the most pathetic things I have ever seen. The NFL, pro players can't score. Both those offensive coordinators, I don't even know who they are. I should have found out. But they both should be on the rails out of town for that pathetic, woeful 3-0, a 3-0 game in the NFL. And I'm not even talking about the 40s. This is 2023. 3-0. It's mind-blowing to me.
The league's a bad product, Mike. I hate to keep harping on it, but it's such a bad product.
The league can be a bad product. You can't just score 3 points in an NFL game. It's ridiculous. All right. I talked about it before. The Detroit Lions are fugazi. This bravado that their head coach speaks with, this machismo on how good they are. Well, we found out how good they are as the Lions go down, down, down to the Chicago Bears. A game I took the Bears in, by the way, 28-13. They got housed by a bad football team, and the Bears, as Justin Fields throws for 223, and he ran for a touchdown. The Lions only were able to score in the second quarter. So, Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, all that thing. It's a fraud, and this is why I think the Eagles get a break, because if they win their first playoff game, the Lions will be their likely opponent, which means at least advance to the NFC title game. All right, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs have exhausted their magic. It's over for them. And what I see here is a decline down the hill of Andy Reid in Kansas City, like we witnessed in Philadelphia, where things got stale and then they started to chip away and they started to be a losing team. And then it was sayonara. Somewhere along the line, you have to move on. This is what I see the start of. There's a disintegration of the Kansas City Chiefs and the end of Andy Reid's career as a head coach with the Chiefs. It's going to take a while. It's going to take maybe the next 2 years or something. But I think the Chiefs are now on the decline. They were on a high. All teams, find that plateau where they go straight down. And this is happening in a couple other areas. First of all, Belichick shouldn't be the coach of the Patriots. That thing has worn out. Sometimes things just wear out. It doesn't mean they're not great coaches. They're all going to go to the Hall of Fame. I'm talking about Mike Tomlin, too. But there needs to be a change in Pittsburgh. There needs to be a change. Well, a couple years down the road, there's going to be a change in Kansas City. And then you're going to see Belichick at the end of the year have a long conversation with Robert Kraft. And it's a shame, but things don't last. And sometimes the message, and listen, for guys like Belichick and Andy Reid and Mike Tomlin, it's been a long time that the message had to get stale. But I think it is stale at this point. Your thoughts?
John Madden, in his book, said after 10 years, even the good coaches lose their voice in the locker room. It happened with Andy. It could be happening again. It certainly happened with Belichick. I know some people say, he could stick around, just just remove the GM tag from his job title and just let him coach. I just think that whole organization needs a reset button.
Yeah, you need fresh air.
Reboot,
I mean, the guys
fresh air, yeah.
You guys in 73, they're going to draft a quarterback next year. A new coach should be able to develop his own quarterback. And things go sour like that.
Yeah, and you look at Pittsburgh, they're still on their third head coach in the last 5 decades. Like he's like the third coach ever.
Just a postscript to that Kansas City game, because the big controversy is Patrick Mahomes went crazy on the sidelines because Kadarius Toney lined up offside on one of the great plays that should have given the Chiefs a win, and Kelsey throws it back to Kadarius Toney for the touchdown, and the play is called back because he was offside, and Mahomes goes crazy. If you look at the play, he was lined up offside. So I don't know what an official is supposed to do. I know it's really fashionable to hate on officials, especially if you're in Kansas City with that play, but it was the right call. And I can't bitch about the right call. That will end today's broadcast of the Mike Missanelli podcast, brought to you by BetRivers. Okay, we got it all out of our system. It's behind us now. We have to digest it for the rest of the week. And then, the game in Seattle, which we thought was going to be a bop, all of a sudden becomes a competitive game, and we'll be glued to the television hoping that they can survive their season at least beyond this game by winning this game. But right now, the Eagles have had everybody, they have taken everybody from this ultra high to like sliding down the side hill at the Little League World Series in Williamsport. That's where fans are headed right now on a cardboard box. So hang in there. Have a great rest of the week. We will have another podcast by the end of the week as we preview the Eagles in Seattle. For Darren, I am Mike. You can reach me by email, mike@mikemiss.com, on Twitter, MikeMiss25. And if you want a cameo shout out, I just gave one yesterday. Cameo, a little holiday greeting from Mikey Miss to the fans out there. I'd love to do it. I spent a lot of time with it. I'll give you a good 2 minutes. I'll discuss your whole family history. All you got to do is give me the facts. I'll throw them in there. All right? Is that it? Is that it for today? That's the Mike Missanelli
That's what,
podcast.
I got to say one thing. I'm so tired of these night games. We got another night game on Monday. I mean, come on. These Eagle night games.
Night game.
Can we play at 1 o'clock?
Post-game show last night. Post-game show last night, I got to sleep at 3 a.m.
3 a.m. So, yeah. Well, because you guys do like 11 hours of a post-game show.
We
after
do a 2.5 hour post-game show on a game that ended that late last night.
It's brutal.
But anyway, that's what I do. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends and neighbors about the Mike Missanelli podcast, and we'll talk to you later this week. Bye-bye.